renowned for his speed and his skill behind the wheel. He's seen his fair share of crashes and collisions on the track, but it's the carnage on our streets that this champion wants to stop, especially among our kids. To be blunt, he wants to put right what our governments have got wrong, including their attitude to speed. Here's Mark Skaife with this very personal and controversial investigation.
This is a story that has to be told because too many of our young are dying on our roads. It's about common sense solutions that have been ignored for too long. What we need to do is to train better drivers, build better roads and drive safer cars.
You are looking way in front of you.
It's about learning to deal with speed. Is it dangerous to drive at 200 kilometres an hour?
Definitely not.
It's about saving lives. We need to seriously look at what young drivers are missing out on when they're learning to drive. They're being taught to pass the test rather than actually how to drive the car. It'll take you to Europe and the world's fastest yet safest roads. But begins in Australia, where nightly our paramedics see not the statistics but the reality.
It was a fairly quiet night for Saturday night.
Ron McLeod is a Victorian paramedic of 27 years.
Paramedic came on and said send everything, so I knew it was something serious.
On January 17th this year, he was dispatched to an accident the likes of which he never wants to see again.
My initial reaction was when I pulled up, my God, what's happened here tonight? We can't have someone alive in this.
It had all the wrong ingredients. A young and reckless driver, an older car, bad road, speed and alcohol.
I hopped out of the vehicle, and at that stage I'd been given a report that there were 2 deceased and 2 entrapped. The Micah paramedic walked towards me and said, "Macca, we have 4 dead." And he said, "We have a young girl who's alive there." When I got to her, all you could see was that part of her face and her hand and nothing else. She was conscious. And one of the police sergeants came over and said, "We need to get some sort of identification of her." And she handed me her name and telephone number, and it was that moment that I looked at it and went, my God, there are 5 parents, friends, relatives now who are now going to receive phone calls or have the police there. And it wasn't until that moment that it hit me. It really struck me.
They knocked on the door and we didn't know what was sort of going on, so the wife got up and answered the door, and the police asked if they could come in. And yeah, it was terrible. I don't wish it on anybody.
David Lister is the father of 17-year-old Matthew, one of the passengers who died that night.
This is Matthew's room. How it was left when he done it and the way he wanted it to be, and his love for the Holden Commodore. He loved the Commodore. I'm very angry. I'm deeply angry about it. I blame the driver 100%. The kids now just don't have the fear. There's no fear at all of it doesn't matter if the car done 200 mile an hour, they'll be wanting to do 240.
Why are young drivers so overrepresented in the road toll?
I think it's pretty straightforward from a psychological point of view. Their brains aren't through growing yet. In girls, it's probably fully developed by about 23, and in boys, on a good day with a wind behind you, about 25.
Adolescent psychologist Michael Carr-Gregg advises Victoria's Roads Minister on issues of safety. What he says, and what I agree with, is that Australia has to learn from countries where kids don't die in the numbers ours do.
I think we could go to Germany and learn from their experience, and frankly I'm baffled as to why after all these years we haven't actually had someone go over there from government.
The way I see it, stop a P-plater from speeding, there's a good chance you stop a P-plater from dying.
In Australia, the focus has been on modifying driver behaviour through punishment and penalties. In Germany, it all starts with better training, then better roads and better cars, putting young drivers into newer, safer vehicles.
If you look at German figures, we peaked in 1970 with 21,300 and something fatalities. We're down minus 80% these days. Of course, this is a contribution by three areas, of course, the infrastructure and road developments, and driver behavior, of course, and also vehicle safety technology.
Dirk Ockel is Senior Manager for Accident Research for the German giant Mercedes-Benz. Here, safety sells, from the development of the airbag in the 70s to its latest model.
Belt-integrated airbag, the so-called belt bag, that helps the occupant in the rear spread the belt forces over a larger area.
What strikes you about Germany is the streets are full of new cars. Unlike Australia, where for so long your first car is your worst car, often old and cheap. Here, the view is the least experienced, need the most protection. As an example, when the global financial crisis hit, one of the German responses was a grant to buy new cars. So whilst we were handing out money for pink maps, the German government gave money to people to buy new cars and get old cars off the road. Right here in Bavaria, it reduced the road toll by 16% in 2009. In Australia, it's more likely that many kids would be driving an older car like this, a 16-year-old Holden Calais, at the time, top of the range. So 1994 Calais Commodore, 70 Ks, very crude old ABS. Oh, just stopped. But compared to its modern cousin, lacking standard safety features. Just watch the difference between these two cars in the braking test. So now in the new car, at the same speed, 70 kilometres an hour, hard on the brake. Unbelievable. Be 10 metres less stopping distance.
We've got a brain that isn't fully developed. You have to do everything you can to keep the kids safe. And if you can make sure that they're in safer cars, that's harm minimisation.
It's not that there aren't accidents or reckless behaviour on German roads. But unlike Australia, look at this guy, 90 Ks in the fast lane, not moving over, and as per normal, you get frustrated, pass on the left. There seems a better knowledge of the rules and etiquette of the road. The difference is they're very aware. Their overall awareness of where other cars are is fantastic. They merge well, they use the lanes well, they get out of the fast lane, they keep the traffic flowing. Spending money on roads saves lives. And if you make that investment, you also need to match it by training learner drivers how to use the road safely, including at speed. Step one begins by banning parents from teaching their children. In Germany, mum and dad don't teach you how to drive. Is that a bad thing in Australia?
I think it's one of the worst things, because the reality is that even though those mums and dads drive, they actually are putting on display all their bad habits.
As you're driving, you have to be very...
German learner drivers have a long road ahead to get their licence. It starts with weeks of theory, a first aid course and lessons on speed.
If you're driving very fast, over 160, you have to look away in front of you.
Students are then obliged to learn in all conditions, at night, in the wet and on the autobahns. As well, everyone is encouraged and expected to complete their licence with advanced driver training.
There's no question that the adolescent brain benefits enormously from training. The more you're shown the right way to do things, the greater the likelihood is that that then becomes automatic. So it's got to be a benefit.
And rather than keep young German drivers away from speed, they're taught to handle speed, up to 160 kilometres an hour on the autobahn, where the wide lanes and gentle banked curbs are designed for fast driving.
Who's driving the car?
It's a far cry from our experience. Where speed kills has been the catch cry for reducing the road toll for decades.
The faster you drive, the harder you